What's going on, YouTube? I am Germ here, and in this video today, we're going to be talking about the best AK-47s in CS2 to buy right now. Now, I'm looking at this from an investing perspective, and what I did is I went through all of the different AK-47s in Counter-Strike 2, not all of them, because I was looking at the Steam Community Marketplace, so I think I missed out on a couple of them, like, the Fire Serpent, probably the Wild Lotus, some of the stuff on the really higher upper tiers of the market, but we can dive into some higher tier items in another video. But this is, every factory new AK-47 that is on the Steam Community Market, I dove into the numbers and tried to find out which ones have been the best performing assets over the last 6, 12, 18, and 24 months. I did this previously leading up into CS2, just kind of loosely looking at what AKs had performed the best over the past couple years, but this time I did a little bit of a deeper dive, crunched the numbers even harder, and I've come up with 5 to 7 AK-47s that I think are actually good purchases right now. And right now I think is a great time to buy because we have seen the market pulling back tremendously. Now, this doesn't mean that the market can't keep pulling back, that prices can't keep going down for the next couple of months, but still, if you're considering buying anytime in the next couple of months, this information should still be very, very valuable to you. And the AKs that have performed the best, and I think will continue to perform the best in the future, are going to be on this list. They show not only which ones had the biggest run-ups during the CS2 hype, but which ones have also held that value the best so far in the downturn. So hopefully this should be a really good video. Again, if you have been buying skins in March, April, May, when prices were super inflated, 10, 20, 30, 40% higher than they were today, then you should really love and find these prices very, very attractive. But let's just get into it because there's so many different things that go into investments. There's rarity, there's age, there's how the things look, how strong the different guns are in the meta, all these different things. So I think there's a lot of common misconceptions about which AKs are actually good investments. And I think once you crunch the numbers, sometimes these things can be a little bit surprising, but let's get into it. For whatever reason, this page didn't want to load. But first up on this list, I want to talk about the AK47 Jaguar. And if you look, a lot of these guns are going to have very, very good looking graphs. I'll also show my spreadsheet at the end of this video so we can actually see exactly, the kind of returns that some of these guns have had. But yes, the Jaguar actually has a very, very good graph. Obviously, this is an old skin. This is from the Esports 2014 summer collection. And for quite some time, the Jaguar wasn't that crazy. When it first came out, it was kind of around $40. It was always, especially back then, $40 is not a cheap AK back in the day. But then it kind of dipped down to the $20, $30 area. But then since then, it has just kind of been a steady increase, into the 40s, into the 50s, into the 60s, into the 70s. It had this big boom run up. It kind of dropped back down. And since then, it has been doing quite well, and again, all the way back here being in like 30, 40, $20 range, sometimes $26, $27, $28, $29, up to where it is right now, around $200, $225 for factory new. I think the Jaguar is a really, really cool skin. It has some cool crafts, stuff like the Pink Panther is very, very iconic. But overall, I get it. It doesn't have like insane textures or like insane updates or anything like that. It's just kind of a coat of paint on an AK. But overall, I think it looks cool. I think the Jaguar looks clean. And this thing has been a very, very good investment. I think it will continue to do so. I think it checks a lot of the boxes. It looks cool and clean. It's old. It's rare. And people seem to at least like it enough to where it has been doing quite well. And I think it will continue to do quite well. We can kind of look at this thing a little bit more zoomed into here, where yes, it did have this big run up just like all the other skins during the CS2 hype, but it has not actually dropped as hard or as far as some other skins. This thing's actually holding up quite well. Again, I'm just looking at all these in the factory new condition, so obviously depending on what wear you're looking at or whatever, things could change a little bit, but the Jaguar definitely seems to be a pretty stable, pretty strong AK to hold going forward in the future. Next up, we have the AK47 Bloodsport, which I think is a cool skin, good looking skin. It's got, just a lot going on. It's red and black, which is obviously pretty good colors overall. But I think the words, some people think it's maybe a little bit chaotic, crazy, whatever, but I think it looks good. I think this is a good AK, and I especially like the graph of this thing as well. Obviously, this thing has not been around as long as the Jaguar, but again, this thing, it hit lows around $40, close to 40. I don't think it really ever got into the 30s or anything like that. But once it hit these lows in the 40s, it kind of went up to 50. Now it's in the 60s. Now it's in the 70s, hitting $80, $90 before dropping back down. And since then, it has run up quite well. And again, if we look more closer into the CS2-ish era, went up to about $226. Yes, it did crash all the way down to $131. But since then, it has rebounded a little bit. Is holding up quite well. So far, the Bloodsport is a good-looking AK that has a good-looking graph. And I think this thing will continue to do well into the future, especially as it gets a little bit older, a little bit more rare, and especially if the market ever starts to rebound. This is not an AK that I would mind holding into CS2. We can look a little bit, like I said at the end of the video, into what the actual returns and everything have been, but it's been good. Next up, an AK that actually got a pretty decent buff in CS2. You can really see the cracks, the crevices, the textures on this thing. This is the AK47 Cartel from the Chroma collection. So definitely has been around for a while. Way back in the day was $4 or $5 for factory new. What a steal. $3 there if we go all the way back. And since then, this thing has just climbed and climbed and climbed. Hit $10 for the first time around January back here, it looks like. And then it's hitting 12. It's hitting 13, 14, 15, 17, and then as of late has had this really big bump up. During the CS2 hype, it was about $15 before. It ran all the way up to $45. This thing tripled in price overnight, which you want to be a little bit careful of, obviously, but again, I think it was for good reason. This thing actually looks a lot better in CS2. Like I said, the lighting hits it very nicely, but it tripled in price overnight, kind of dropped down, got about cut in half from there, but since then it's rebounded okay, and I do think this one will do pretty well going forward into the future. I think this one's obviously on the cheaper end, but sometimes people are looking for cheaper stuff. Obviously, cheaper stuff allows you to buy more in bulk, so you have more options about buying and selling and moving in and out of your positions, but also some people just don't have, the $250 to drop on the Jaguar or whatever, so a Cartel might be your option in kind of that lower to mid tier, but I still think this one will do quite well, even on an ROI, like percentage basis going forward in the future. We still have a couple more to get through here. We have the Predator. This one I think looks absolutely disgusting. I think it looks very ugly, but the graph looks quite good. This obviously being from the Dust collection. This graph, it's just kind of continued to grow and grow. There's really no, yes, right here at the beginning, it has some downward movement, going from about $32, crashing down to about $7, which is crazy. But since then, this thing has really just been straight up. Some small dips here and there. But even as of late with the CS2 hype, this thing didn't feel the CS2 hype as hard as some things, so it hasn't dropped as hard as some things either. This one has just done quite well. It's going to probably continue to do well. Like I said, it's not one that I think looks attractive or looks great or, got some crazy insane buff in CS2 or anything like that as far as I know, but it's done well. It's made people money. The graph looks good. I don't know. Keep an eye on it. Might be something to hold. Next up, we have the fuel injector, which this one might be my favorite on the list. I went through a period of really loving the Vulcan and thinking the Vulcan was probably the best AK-47 for investing purposes. But right now, the fuel injector is looking as good as ever. This is from the Wildfire collection, and man, look at this graph. This graph, it's insane, especially obviously for a little bit more expensive skin. You can see here $365, but it's always been expensive. $100 back here, maybe down to like $60, $55 at the low end. But then since then, just continual gains has just chugged along. Yes, this little drop, but I know a lot of the market saw a little bit of a drop in this period, and since then it has just done insanely well. Up to $865 in factory new during the craziest of the CS2 hype, but then drop down to $650, and it's kind of just stayed flat in there. Yes, it's obviously down from where it was on April 21st, but everything is, and it's held up quite well. It's still well above where it was before the CS2 hype started. Fuel injector, I think, looks great. It's rare. It's cool. People love it. There's that natural demand, and it's also been a great investment as well. And like I said, this might be my number one choice right now if I had to buy an AK-47 today. I think we have two more left here. We have the AK-47 First Class, which all the graphs and charts and everything, all the data I look for, this one performs quite well. This thing is truly pretty an insane performer. Look back here, $12, $13, and then it's just kind of continued to go up. Again, not a whole lot of downward periods for this one. If we look even into the CS2 hype era, this thing has just kind of continued to go up. I think this one flies under the radar for a lot of people. I think this would definitely be one of my top choices as well. Today sitting at around $200. Obviously, a lot of these are going to be more expensive. Again, we're looking at factory new. You could always look at getting cheaper wares and stuff like that. But I also want to make investing stuff, and obviously sometimes investing is going to be a little bit expensive. You got to spend some money to make some money. And it wouldn't be an I Am Germ AK-47 list. We didn't talk about the Vulcan. I still do think that the Vulcan is one of the best performers out there. Yes, it is expensive, but I think that is for good reason. Right now, the most recent Vulcan sold on the Steam market for $11.54, which is pretty crazy. But this thing back in the day, you could get it for as cheap as $48, $47, somewhere in there. It just continued to run and run and run. I think this thing looks absolutely insane in game. It looks beautiful. People love it. 17 at the peak of the CS2 hype, so it has dropped off significantly since then. but I think if you remove that CS2 hype era, you're going to see this AK47 do quite well. Overall, some of my top choices are definitely not the Predator. I really like the Cartel right now. I really like the fuel injector right now. Really like the first class right now, and I'm always going to love the Vulcan. But all the AKs that I've highlighted in this list, I do think are at least interesting buys, at least to potentially check out right now. If we go to the ultimate CS investing spreadsheet that I have been crafting up here, we can see what all these AKs have done in this time period. Again, overall, guns are not amazing investments in terms of ROI. It depends what you're looking for. If you are someone who plays the game that wants to buy some cool looking skins that can maybe make you some money over time, sure, guns are a great investment. If you're looking for someone who maybe doesn't play the game as much, doesn't care about what stuff looks like in game, or you're trying to maximize exactly how much money you're making, then hey, guns are probably not going to be the best bet. But if you do care about guns, here's what they've done in the last 6 months. I don't really know what's been going on with the red laminate. I think this is just kind of an outlier. I wouldn't really pay too much attention to this, but as far as some other skins, again, you can see here most skins are down in the last 6 months, but you do have a couple AKs that have done okay. Wasteland Rebel up 1.2x, Jungle Spray up 1.3, Case Hardened up 1.3, but obviously 6 months ago was peak CS2 hype, so most stuff has dropped since then. But in the past year, you start to see some things that have done quite well. The Jaguar's up 3x in the last 12 months. First Class up 2.8x in the last 12 months. You have the Cartel that's up 2.5x. Fuel Injectors up 2.3x. So some of these AKs are actually not doing too bad in a 12-month period. You have the 18-month period where the First Class, again, 3.3x. Predator, 3x. The Jaguar up 2.5x. And then in the last 24 months, some of the top dogs are the Fuel Injector, the Case Hardened, the Predator, the Vulcan, Cartel, First Class, Jaguar, and the Bloodsport. But again, you can look at the 24-month performance, 3.6x, 3.5x, 3x, 2.5x being the top performing AKs. And then you go to something like cases and you look at the top, you look at the last 24 months and you can see just how much cases have kind of smashed guns in the last 24 months. But, you know, some guns have done better than some cases. It just kind of depends. But yeah, this is what we're looking at for AKs right now. These are some of my top choices if I was to invest in the AK-47 market right now. These are what I would be looking to buy. Again, I think it's a potentially pretty good time to buy. Again, if you want to buy the dips, you should be trying to buy low, sell high, all that good stuff. But that is pretty much it for this video today, guys. Hopefully I catch you in the next one. But until then, peace.